Here are 3 weird discipline strategies you haven't heard before. The first one is that extreme discipline is actually easier. So this seems really counterintuitive. A lot of people, they go for more of a moderate type of approach to discipline where, they'll start by, let's take screen time, for example. So maybe they have a 3-hour screen time to start and they'll start by lowering it down to maybe 2 hours, then 1.5 hours, then 1 hour, and so on. I find that going extreme in a certain realm of self-discipline actually turns out to be significantly easier. People always say you should limit yourself and do it in moderation when it comes to discipline because you don't want to tire yourself out. I personally disagree. I don't think you should, for example, go from a 3-hour screen time to a 0-hour screen time immediately. But I have a specific approach to discipline that is highly extreme, but also, for me personally, has been highly effective, and I'm going to share that with you today. So, my strategy is essentially go completely to the extreme, like the most extreme you can go in one specific area. So, for example, let's say you are addicted to sugar, all kinds of sugar. So like cookies, donuts, cakes, whatever, right? And let's say your biggest, your sort of most addictive sweet treat would be cookies, okay? Then I'm going to say, okay, for the next 30 days, you can still eat donuts, you can still eat cakes, but you can't have any cookies at all. I'm not saying limit yourself to 1 cookie a day, right? I'm not saying, oh, go slow and in moderation. I'm saying you can do the other bad stuff, but you cut out this one bad thing entirely. And there's something that's so psychologically satisfying to where we don't have to count how many cookies we ate and count calories and all that stuff. All you have to think about is, can I eat this or can I not? And there's something about that that's so satisfying. So with the screen time, for example, I personally did this with myself. I find that the vast majority of wasted time that I spend on screens, because not all time that you spend on a screen is wasted, right? Like texting friends, planning social events, all of that is a reasonable use of your time. By the way, top link in the description if you want to learn how to actually have your phone benefit your mental health instead of letting it use you. But anyways, there are productive ways to use your phone. I'm talking about the unproductive screen time. In that unproductive screen time category, the biggest sort of consumer of that time is YouTube, right? I personally struggle, now less, but I used to struggle a lot more with watching a bunch of random YouTube videos. And it would seem really productive. It would seem really insightful because, oh yeah, I'm learning a lot of new things, but I was just kind of learning the same information over and over again. I was really just doing it for the dopamine and to escape the negative thoughts and emotions of, boredom, of maybe feeling a bit worried. And so I was just constantly distracting myself and escaping instead of sitting with those emotions. So anyways, YouTube was the biggest thing for me. So I said, okay, I know that certain channels and certain types of videos are much more likely to waste my time than others. I know that there are certain channels that I can watch, and no matter, even if I know all that information, I still feel like it will be useful to watch because there will be some new insight that I haven't already discovered. There will be something new in that video, and this channel or this style of video, let's say, always serves me well. And so I say, okay, I'm only going to limit myself. I think I only limited myself to 2 or 3 channels for a 30-day period. It was 2 months ago, where for one straight month, I told myself, okay, I can only watch these 3 channels. And I did not watch a single video from any other channel. The only exception was if I search something up, let's say a tutorial on how to use an app, then of course I'm not going to try to find search up this specific channel. How am I going to use this app, right? So that was a more extreme self-binding, right? If you look at it in terms of the absolutes, that is more extreme. You're limiting yourself to only a certain number of channels. You're only limiting yourself to a certain source of information. But interestingly enough, I found it a lot easier because I knew I didn't have to, count screen time and, oh no, I only have 5 minutes left. What should I watch with my time? And I found that this was actually so much more beneficial for me in actually achieving the goal that I wanted with lowering my screen time. The goal itself was not just to lower my screen time, the goal was also to stop watching wasteful content. And by eliminating the wasteful content and only keeping what was left and necessary, I actually achieved much more progress in my goal. There's something weirdly psychologically easier about doing something in the extreme, where you completely cut out one specific thing, or you completely go all in on one specific thing, even if you're letting yourself do the other bad habits, even if you let yourself eat cake and donuts and candy, right? You cut out just cookies, okay? That is the first step. Basically, if you can go extreme in your discipline on one particular area. So, for example, this wouldn't just be like, oh, go extreme in my discipline on the particular area of sugar or video games. I'm talking more specific. Literally tell yourself, for the next 30 days, I can play as much Xbox, PlayStation, PC games, whatever. I can play as many video games as I want. I just cannot touch this one video game. You see? What we're doing is we're removing entirely one category of an addiction. And what this does is it essentially tells us that we're okay with living without it, right? The biggest part of exercising willpower and removing addictions from your life is realizing that you're okay living without it and that you can continue going on. If you gave yourself, let's say, how about I literally eat like a quarter of a cookie per day? That's not going to do anything to my health. Even then, you're still psychologically feeding the addiction. You're telling yourself, I can't live without cookies and I have to have a cookie every single day. So it might seem like a silly example, but really try to understand what I'm saying here. Cut out one category of things entirely. And honestly, in this period, it's okay if you want to go full-blown indulgence mode on the other things, because I understand it's hard, and what we want is to make discipline a little bit easier. Discipline itself in its nature is difficult, right? But we want to make it easy to implement. Most importantly, easy to stick to. We want discipline itself to be difficult, but we don't want it to be so difficult that we don't stick to it. Right? Just like when you're lifting weights in the gym, you want the weight to be heavy enough that it challenges you, but not so heavy that you can't lift it, right? So from here, you might be thinking, okay, let's say I stop playing this one kind of video game, or I stop watching this specific channel because I know I spend a lot of time wasting my time on it, or I cut out cookies, for example. From there, I still have all these other addictions. What am I going to do? It's so much easier and more formulaic to go from 1 hour screen time to 45 minutes screen time to 40 minutes to 35 minutes to 30 minutes, right? That's so much easier and more formulaic, but addiction does not work this way. Addiction is not linear, right? You do not spend the same amount of time or unproductive wasted time on YouTube as, say, TikTok or Instagram, right? It varies between them. So what you do is you tackle your biggest, hardest enemy first. You go absolutely extreme in that. So for example, cutting out your favorite video game, but you keep playing all the other video games. At that point, you still have all of these other video games that you're playing, and that's still a problem. We want to cut out video games entirely, right? That's the eventual goal. So what you do from there is, let's say you set this for a period of 30 days, right? And most importantly, you want to have a clear time frame so that it's not just arbitrary and, one day, I'm feeling really bored and tired and, let me just hop on my favorite game. It's like, fine, it's a special day, it's my birthday, whatever, right? You need to have a very clear time period set from the day you begin so that no matter what, you have this clear rule that you stand by, right? If players of, let's say, like chess, right? If players of a game like chess made up the rules as they went, they would bend the rules to benefit themselves. That is why games have rules made beforehand. And it's the exact same thing with willpower. With willpower, you need to make sure that you set the rule beforehand of, okay, I can just do these 3 channels, or I can just play this one video game, no other video games, or I can just eat this one sweet treat, nothing else. And I'm going to do it for this long. Here are the exceptions. here are the cases in which I would be okay, for example, watching another channel, right? With me, it would be like, oh, if I need to like search something up and there's an educational video on it, like something technical, for example, like how to use this Google Chrome extension. Like, of course, I'm not going to search another channel for that, right? So have those rules set beforehand. And I want you to do this right now. Whatever your biggest sort of addiction, whatever you feel like is holding you back, and whatever, because you know what you're like, you've been thinking about it for the last like 10 minutes, right? You know what that is for you. You know what little thing feels so hard to give up. It feels like it's so insignificant, so minuscule, but I promise you, it's that last little bit of like, okay, there's just one little addiction that I'm hanging on to, this one little thing, and it doesn't even hurt me that much. It's not even that bad. And I'll get to that in a second. It's not even that bad. It doesn't hurt me that much. Let me just keep this one thing, please. That's the thing you need to cut out. And that thing, when you cut that out, that will change everything. Okay? So identify that one thing and set a clear rule. I think 30 days or a month is perfect. So set a clear rule to tell yourself, okay, for the next 30 days, I will not use this specific addiction. In these scenarios, here are the exceptions. Basically, lay out all the ground rules for that period. And I find this so much more effective than constantly reducing it. Because, like, let's say, for example, you go traveling, right? Let's say you have a 2-hour screen time and you bring it down to 1 hour by slowly shaving off time. And then you're traveling one day and you're sitting in the airport and you're bored. You're so bored. But, oh, I can't go over an hour of screen time. But wait, it's okay. I'm at the airport, so I'm going to make an exception this one time. And then you go and then you find yourself scrolling for the next 4 hours, right? Compared to the person who's built up so much willpower and so much discipline that when they have that boring day at the airport, they can actually use their phone for something productive instead of, because all the other person knows with the 1 hour screen time, they haven't actually restricted themselves. They've just reduced the amount of addiction, but they're still feeding themselves those addictions, right? The person who eliminates one addiction entirely, they now know how to survive without that addiction. And they're going to be so much less likely to fall in these excuses and traps because their discipline regime is so extreme. It's so rigid, but it's only temporary. Okay? When you have a temporary regime of discipline, what that does is, number one, it signals to yourself that, yeah, I can do this. Like, I'm capable of this. And because it's so extreme, you gain that level of self-confidence associated with doing that thing. You tell yourself, I just did that, right? I was able to successfully resist my biggest temptation for the last year for 30 whole days straight. And because it's temporary, you don't feel like it's limiting you, right? If I told you you can't play your favorite video game for a day, you would be so much more likely to stick with it. If I told you that you couldn't play your favorite video game for a year, you'd be like, what? Like what? Okay, let's say I give you $1,000 if you don't play your favorite video game. If I tell you to do that for a day versus if I tell you to do that for a year, you're going to be so much more likely to do it, to abstain from that video game for one day, because a year just seems like it's far too unreachable of a goal. It's far too distant in the future for you to actually achieve. And so you're not actually going to pursue it. When we set these temporary time frames, we prove to ourselves that we can do it because we're able to do it. We're able to do it because it's not too long. We have that trust in ourselves that, yeah, I can do it for 30 days. I can go a day without playing video games. Of course I can, right? That is what actually builds up your skills of willpower and discipline. And I know I'm kind of using them interchangeably here in this video. This video is mostly centered around discipline, but I think this first point also goes really well with willpower. So, that being said, once you've cut out that first addiction, so let's say the cookies, right? From there, after those 30 days, you've formed a habit. You now no longer have that same level of craving or addiction for cookies. So at that point, I would welcome you to go for the next step. Cut out donuts, cut out cake, right? Slowly, one by one by one. If your if your screen time looks like 3 hours TikTok, 1 hour Instagram, 30 minutes YouTube, cut out TikTok first. Go 30 days without TikTok. And you'll find that at the end of the 30 days, you barely even feel like opening up TikTok anymore. Sure, you might open it and scroll like a couple minutes here and there, but it's so much better than it was before. And then you know what the real culprit is. Because while you've been cutting out TikTok, guess what's been going up on your screen time? Instagram, right? So you're almost kind of like playing whack-a-mole with these little addictions here. The biggest sort of enemy, you crush that first, and then whatever's left, you get that, and then that, and then that, right? You're sort of playing whack-a-mole with all of these different addictions, going from the biggest to the smallest. And that is how you actually build discipline and willpower, not keeping everything in your life and slowly cutting it down in moderation, because again, that perpetuates the addiction, and that is so much easier to fall into the trap of moderation or novelty or exceptions, basically, right? Because it's not a strict time frame or a strict set of ground rules, and because it is for so long, because you're telling yourself, when I go from a 2 hour screen time to a 1 hour screen time, I intend to keep that for the rest of my life. And therefore, I should have exceptions. You know, if I'm really tired one day, it's okay if I scroll for 3 hours, right? But if you tell yourself, no, I'm not opening up TikTok no matter what for the next 30 days, even on that day when you feel tired, you're not going to do it. You see the difference? Okay, the second thing is realize what real discipline is. So I see a lot of people sort of faking discipline and staying within their comfort zone. So we start off doing the good habits. And by the way, this is a little bit more of an advanced tip, but if you're still a beginner to discipline, I still think you could learn from this. So we start off doing the good habits using discipline. So for example, if you have certain fitness goals, you start going to the gym, you start meditating, you start reading, you start journaling. We start doing all these good habits, but we know what would really take us to the next level. We know that there would be something else. You probably have something in your mind, something else, something a little bit more disciplined that would really take you to the next level. And it would be hard. It would be so hard because it's this little nitpicky thing. But you convince yourself that it's not necessary. You convince yourself that, oh, because I've been meditating, because I've been journaling, because I've been reading, I've been doing all this good stuff, and so I don't really need to worry about discipline anymore. You know, I'm already a disciplined person. Understand, discipline is like, if you've ever seen a graph, like a linear graph of your trajectory, discipline is like the slope of your graph in success, right? So like, let's say your graph goes like that, right? If discipline is low, your graph kind of goes slowly up, right? But if discipline is high, it goes up like that. It goes super fast, like up, right? Discipline is like the slope of your graph. The slope of your graph will reach zero eventually, right? I don't quite understand if you get this, but basically, your success is directly dependent on your level of discipline. If you lose all discipline, in other words, if you stop encountering difficulty, you will plateau in your level of success in any endeavor, right? Because that's what success comes down to. Success is just a product of your discipline in that realm. Your success in losing weight is just a product of how disciplined you are in that realm. Your success in business is just a product of how disciplined you are in that realm. Same with relationships, same with money. All of these things are just a product of your discipline. And so, let's just remind ourselves what the meaning of discipline is. Discipline is doing hard things even when you don't feel like doing them. So, now that you've already done all these habits, you've started meditating, you've started journaling, maybe you've been on this for a couple of months, do you feel like doing these things? You certainly don't feel like not doing them. You certainly don't feel that same sense of dread when you woke up that first day and thought, oh, I have to take a cold shower and then meditate and then journal. I hate my life. You don't feel like that anymore. It feels easy when you become habitual with it. And when it starts to feel easy, the discipline is lost. Your slope of your graph starts going, instead of like that, it goes like that, and then it plateaus, right? You stop experiencing that same level of progress because you're not challenging yourself anymore. You are the equivalent of the comfortable, lazy person who never gets up off the couch, never goes to the gym, never tries to improve themselves. You are the equivalent of that. The only difference is that you're up here and they're down here. But guess what? You're both just maintaining. Neither of you are growing. The real thing that you have to do is recognize what real discipline is. Discipline is always hard. Always. Discipline will never get easy. Don't think that these discipline things will ever get easier. Sure, it gets easier to meditate. Sure, it gets easier to journal. But guess what? Once you get to that level where those things are easy, you need to level it up to the next level. It is no longer discipline to do those things, right? When you start out in the gym, when you're in your first 1 to 2 years of lifting, you make incredible progress. You can eat terribly, you can sleep late, sleep 4 hours a night, you can have a terrible training routine, and you'll still build muscle. But once you get a couple of years into lifting, it becomes so much harder because you've lost that sort of noob progress. At the beginning, the discipline itself was just showing up to the gym. Now, the extra level of discipline is eating clean and sleeping right and making sure your testosterone is optimized, all those kinds of things, right? So understand that you will not continue to see progress if you do not continue to increase your level of discipline. Discipline decreases. If you keep a habit going, let's say meditation. You start meditation. It takes an incredible amount of discipline to start that meditation habit. Okay? As time goes on, meditation begins to feel habitual. And with that, the level of discipline required to meditate goes down. You no longer have to discipline yourself to meditate because it feels easy, it feels habitual. Okay? If you stay in this realm, your progress will plateau. The real successful people keep improving their level of discipline. They know they can never stay in their comfort zone. Even if their comfort zone is meditating, journaling, reading, doing all the good habits, even if their comfort zone is having a wonderful relationship with their family and working super hard to provide for the world, even if their comfort zone is at such a high level, they still need to discipline themselves to go outside of that comfort zone, to go one step further if they want to continue seeing progress. Otherwise, your progress will plateau. So, find whatever goal or area. By the way, you should have your goals, written down at some point. Again, top link in the description. I go over writing down your goals and how that's really important. But anyways, you should have your goal written down, or your major goals for the coming year. Find a specific area of discipline in maybe one or two of those goals, and you know what that could be, right? Just think for a second, brainstorm. It's going to be hard, right? It could be stretching after your workout, and you know that for a couple of days, it's not going to make a difference. But you know that over the course of weeks and months, your mobility is going to improve so much. You're going to be so much better at lifting, getting in the stretch position. You're going to be so much less injury prone, all those kinds of things, right? You know that you meditate for 20 minutes, but let's say there's this new kind of meditation practice that's really new and crazy and super hard. You know that if you do that, you could potentially improve your level of focus in your business. You could start doing breathing practices if you're really focused on your health, to stop over breathing, to improve your lung capacity, etc., HRV, all that stuff, right? There's these specific advanced little things that you can sort of nitpick, little things that seem useless. But again, that is where discipline is built. Discipline is built, remember in the beginning, discipline is built when we started making our bed. Making your bed is literally useless. Making your bed won't make you a millionaire. Making your bed won't make you fit. Making your bed won't fix your relationships. But making your bed builds discipline because we feel like it's useless. That is exactly what you need to emulate in all of these realms of your life. So if you have a fitness goal, perhaps, find something that you feel like could be potentially a little bit useless right now, and maybe even in the long term, you don't really see the value of it, and do it anyways. Because I guarantee you, the discipline you will build will transfer over to all other areas of that realm. You'll find yourself pushing even harder in the gym just because you stretch after your workout, because you're becoming the person who can discipline themselves to do anything like that. And by the way, with this practice, don't hide from the true discipline that you have to take, right? For example, again, we become really comfortable when we start to make these habits. You might think that the discipline thing to do, let's say you're advanced, right? You have started reading, journaling, meditating, going to the gym, blah, blah, blah. You're really advanced. At this point, you may think that the right thing, the disciplined thing to do would be to, let's say you're working 10 hours a day already, to start working 11 or 12 hours a day, start pushing harder in the gym, going to the gym 5 times a week instead of 4 times a week, meditating for 30 minutes instead of 20 minutes. But honestly, you're kind of just lonely. So I would say the real disciplined thing for you in that case would just be to go and make friends. We find so much comfort in our routines, so much, like when we become advanced, we feel so productive, and it feels so good to be productive. Being productive feels so good because you're feeling like you're actually accomplishing something, and you are. But again, remember the 80-20 rule, right? You don't actually get that much more benefit out of being crazy productive. The extra 2 hours you work at the end of the day won't do anything for your life. But 2 hours, if you put that into your social life, I guarantee you that's going to change your life. So find what's actually going to bring you results, what's actually disciplining yourself to do, right? You might feel like these things are silly, or like if you're someone who's really addicted to like productivity and you're obsessed with like working all day, you're going to feel like, oh, going outside for a walk and, playing with your family and, finding friends, you might feel like that's a waste of time. That's not productive. And, oh, I should just like make money and stuff. You might feel that way. And I understand that completely. But again, you felt like making your bed was useless when you first started. And guess what it brought you to? It brought you to here, right? You need to do the exact same thing now. Even if it may seem silly or useless, do what's actually going to improve those realms of your life which you want to improve in. You have your goals written down. You know what discipline practices are going to take you to the next level, and you can't fake it, right? Don't ever get comfortable and think that, oh, but I'm already at a really good level and I'm meditating and I'm doing all the good habits, so let me just stay here and, I'm already successful. No. You need to keep growing. People are like bicycles, okay? You cannot sit there on a bicycle standing still and expect to stay upright, right? You're going to fall no matter what. People are like bicycles. You need to keep riding forward, or backward, I guess. You need to keep riding forward in order to stay on balance. You cannot stay still. Otherwise, you will find yourself becoming more and more complacent over time. You will find yourself slacking off on those habits, and you'll stop having that same sense of passion, that same sense of motivation to go after it each and every day. Self-improvement was so fun in the beginning because it was so hard. We woke up with a little bit of that excitement every day of like, wow, I'm going to do something hard that I've never done before. And then you start doing it for like 60 days in a row, 90 days in a row, and it just becomes a part of your life. This is why life starts to feel boring again. It's not meant to feel boring again. Really, what we were meant to do all along is just keep progressing, keep going forward, keep getting better. More discipline, more discipline, more discipline. Go from a 3-minute cold shower to a 5-minute cold shower. Then start doing ice baths, long-term ice baths, not ice baths, but cold water immersion for like up to 30 minutes, right? There's so many ways you can level up these things in your life, whether they matter to you or not, that will improve your discipline and that will really level up your success to the next level. The final little thing that I want to share with you is a little mindset shift related to discipline that I think really, really helped me, especially in the last few weeks in my discipline journey. And that is the idea that nothing is hidden. Nothing is hidden. What do I mean by this? Every single disciplined action you take, every single act of discipline or act of willpower that you take will be shown in the future. Nothing can hide. Every single act of complacency that you show will be shown in the future. You will feel the consequences of your actions, no matter what. It may feel inconsequential in the moment, right? Maybe you've been sticking to a diet and you feel like eating a cookie one day, and it feels so good in the moment, right? You just really feel like it. That is when you build character. When you feel the temptation the strongest, when your muscles are burning the most in the gym, that is where you're making the most gains. When you feel the temptation the strongest, that is when you're making the most progress. So anyways, you have this cookie, right? You may start to justify or convince yourself that, oh, it doesn't really matter that much and it's just one cookie here and there and it doesn't actually matter in the long run. Everything matters. And this is a really important idea that I want you to take home. Everything matters. Even if it doesn't matter in terms of the materialistic thing, even if you know that, let's say, stretching today after the gym won't make you any extra gains, no matter what. Let's say you can scientifically prove it and give me a literal PhD research paper. It's not about the real world results. Eating a cookie won't make you gain weight, sure, but that's not what it's about. It's about you. It's about your character, your discipline. And every single disciplined action you take shows in that. Every single one. There is no room whatsoever for cheat days or, everyone needs a little time to rest and relax and take a break. No. Every single action or every single inaction in regards to discipline will be shown in your true character. People will see it when they look at you. People will feel it. It'll show in the way that you interact with others. It'll show in the way that you approach your work. It'll show in your progress toward your goals. Nothing is hidden, and everything that you put in regards to discipline, even if it seems so inconsequential, even if it's literally finishing the reel that you're watching, which ends in 5 seconds, or pausing and getting out of the app right now. 5 seconds of a reel is not going to do anything to your attention span. But still, you pause the reel and you get off. Why? Because it shapes your character. You want to justify finishing that reel because it feels so good. It feels so good to be distracted. It feels so good to escape from the world instead of, facing reality. But when you do that, when you go off the app, when you do face reality, when you don't give in to temptation, that is precisely what builds your character the most. It is in the hardest times that we build ourselves up the most. When we are facing the strongest level of addiction, that is when we build the most willpower. When we feel the most tired, the most lazy, the most exhausted, that is when we build the most discipline because we don't want to do it. When you build character, it will show in every area of your life. And no matter how inconsequential a single action may seem, I can promise you it will show. This was really important for me because I felt, especially with watching educational videos, it can start to get a bit addicting at times. I was finding myself, while I was cooking my food, listening to an educational podcast. And it didn't really matter. The things that I was learning wouldn't actually change my life in any way. I was just doing it to distract myself from the present moment instead of being present and focused on cooking. But when I thought of this idea that nothing is hidden, I started to change my mind. Earlier, I was thinking, it's educational and it doesn't matter, it's just while I'm cooking. Even if it doesn't matter, it matters for your character. Nothing can hide. None of your actions and none of your inactions can hide from your reality. Everything will show at some point. Everything. All that time you spent with your addiction will show. And all the progress you make away from it will show. All that time you spend disciplining yourself, even the little things that you know for a fact in the moment won't matter. They will show in the future. You know how there are some people who just magically seem to get good results, or some people who just magically seem to have bad luck? It's not luck. It's not magic. Everything shows in what you do. Okay? Your results and your character are all because of your actions and your inactions. So nothing that you do or nothing that you don't do can hide from your reality. I promise you, it will all show up in the end. For more tips like this and more guidance on mental health, specifically, building discipline, building willpower, like we talked about in today's video, check out the top link in the description. Buy my book, Calibrated Mind. I go in depth on how you actually build up willpower. So I talked about some more advanced strategies, but how we actually go about building discipline, how willpower and addiction really work in the brain, and how you can go about fighting those addictions that we talked about in the video. I also have 4 other chapters other than discipline and willpower. And in those 4 other chapters, I talk about other aspects of mental health, like stress management and happiness, presence. Those are all really important to enjoy life properly and to really have that full level of motivation, that full level of passion in everything that you do. Mental health is extremely important, and if you feel like you've learned a lot from this video or any other videos on my channel, I think you'll find that really interesting. That's all, and I will see you in the next video.